Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and welcome to Wasteland Talks, my weekly talk show where I talk about whatever the hell I want. And 'tis the season. It is indeed October. It's Halloween time, and I have my very, very good friend Haley here, and we're going to be talking about our top three favorite horror films. Haley, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me. Although I will say that this might have been the hardest prompt you've ever given me for one of these experiences.
It's really hard to like whittle it down to three. I almost picked one that I showed you.
Oh, yeah.
And I will tell the story afterwards in case it pops up on your list or anything.
I
But
think it is going to pop
okay,
up on my list.
so then I will talk about that story when we get there.
Yes.
But it came very close to my list. And if we want to throw some honorable mentions, I figure we'll do that
Yes.
after.
Yes.
Because then we don't want to spoil anything.
Yes.
So, to get things started, though, Haley, what's your number three?
So, yeah, we're gonna have to talk about some honorable mentions because so as Shane knows, I'm someone who loves horror as a genre. Um, but this was really tough because for every single person, horror can be something different. And
No.
so what I'm giving to the people is my list. And like you said, Shane, earlier, I had to think a lot about it because
Mhm.
there's so many good ones. Like there are a lot of bad ones, like a
Yeah,
lot of
a
bad
lot of
ones, but there
bad
are like a
ones.
decent number of good ones. So
Mhm.
I was like really indecisive on what my number three was. And it even took to like down to today. I was still thinking about it, and I think I finally landed on a movie that I just kind of want to throw out there because I think it's one of these that I haven't heard a ton of people talk about it,
Mhm.
but I thought it was really good. Um, and it's like somewhat recent, so maybe some people out there haven't seen it. I don't know, but it's called The Ritual. So I think it's on Netflix. Is it one you've seen, Shane?
You told me about this one, and
Yeah.
I put it on my watch list, and you colored me surprised because you had something on your list I haven't watched.
I'm glad that I get to give you a recommendation. It's such a rare
Mhm.
occurrence. But yeah, The Ritual is my number three. I'm this sort of I again, like everyone likes their own type of horror. I do have a soft spot for the like you're in the woods and something's out there and you don't know what it is. Like that type of scary, like it sits with me and I do find it freaky. Like
Mhm.
I think there are definitely types of horror that they just don't impact me very much. And so The Ritual is good in that I found it to be, experimental. Like there were some interesting things thrown in there that are, sort of blurring like reality and stuff, which was cool. And I think they did a good job of it because there's doing it or like setting out to doing it and
Yeah.
actually accomplishing it. And it's just like legitimately, it goes there. Like it's freaky. And I think some people don't like to see the thing that's scary. And I'm the sort of person who's fine with it if it, again, is pulled off well.
Yeah.
And I think the movie, like, there's a fair amount to it. Like, thinking back on it, some movies are just like the Blair Witch Project. You're just running around in the woods the whole time. And like it's compelling and that's a great example of that genre from like
Mhm.
early on. But I think this is something that really takes it further and is super effective. So if you haven't seen The Ritual, I highly recommend giving it a watch and like hug something because it's kind of creepy.
You know what's funny is that you mentioned the Blair Witch Project, which one of my biggest hot takes to tell people is that I hate that movie.
I don't blame you.
I
I don't
watched it
blame
as
you.
an adult. I had, I was what that came out in like '99 or somewhere around there.
It was like, yeah,
So, like I was 8 or 9 when that
old one.
originally came out,
Hmm.
and I remember the whole buzz around and people freaking out about it. And then I watched it post college, Like I'm a full blown adult. I'm sitting there. I'm like, I want these people to be lost in the woods because I hate every last one of them.
They do suck.
That was it, and like just half the movie is them whining in the woods, and that's the tricky thing about horror movies because like you could do everything right and have the worst characters in it, and it
Hmm.
just not work. Because like if I
Yeah.
don't care about them at all, they're cannon fodder. So like
I think Blair Witch was the magic of it when it came out. And of course, I
exactly.
was a child who I had some, like some people have that uncle. I had that uncle who told me it was real, made me see it. I was like traumatized, like traumatized. And so I had the closest thing you could get to like the perfect viewing experience of the
Mm.
Blair Witch because I was naive, like a child.
No.
I saw it. I thought it was real. I believed every second of it. I was mortified. And
Well,
only
here's the
like
thing.
later did I
They felt
learn it
like
was not
real
real.
people. Because
Yeah.
like people would be that annoying
And
lost
that's
in the
kind of
woods.
that's the one thing that I say about it is like found footage is a slippery slope because for you
Yeah.
to believe that it's a found footage thing, it does have to like be kind of bad. It has to walk that line. So I'm not
But
gonna say Blair Witch is a good movie that people should subject themselves to, but like in its
now
time, I think it was very
pull it. I just pulled up the ritual because
uh-huh.
I was interested to see who made it because that I feel like that goes a long way too. Because I think there are a lot of really strong filmmakers who understand horror out there.
Hmm.
And this is actually really surprising because David Bruckner, who directed this,
Hmm.
just had the new Hellraiser come out.
I
He's
just saw that an hour ago.
Oh, there you go. He directed that. This is from the director of The
Oh,
Ritual. He also directed The Night House,
the
which,
Night
if you haven't
House.
seen that with Rebecca Hall in it, watch that. Because I watched that in a 300 seat theater by myself on a Friday afternoon that summer it came out, and it was not fun.
Wait, the Night House?
The Night House.
Okay.
So, and looking this up, The Ritual, I love Rafe Spall, who plays the main character in this. He's one of the Andys from Hot Fuzz, and he's also in a show
Oh.
called Trying on Apple TV Plus that I love. And I also noticed that Robert James Collier, one of the butlers from Downton Abbey, is also in The Ritual here.
The acting I think is quite good. And it's not easy to be like really freaked out, like truly
Mhm.
unhinged freaked out in a movie, and I think people accomplish that for what it's worth.
I I definitely want it is on my watch list and it's like number 44 on like a 200 movie
Oh,
watch list. So like
you're
it's
getting there.
we're getting there.
Let me know what you think. I'm very curious.
I will definitely let you know. And this was a looks like it was a Netflix original, so
Mm.
I don't have to worry about it going anywhere
Yeah,
unless
it's got high
Netflix goes
production
somewhere.
quality, so I feel like it's gonna stick around. It's not one of those like pieces of crap that they just sort of put out there.
Endless trash. Endless
At least
trash.
I don't think so. Maybe some people will disagree with me, but I think it's solid.
Now, my number three, and I'm gonna have a ton of honorable mentions. That'll be fun to talk about at the end.
Yes.
Um, I decided to really just go with my heart and my gut on this one. And it is a horror comedy. And I
Okay.
feel like it's a lot more comedy than it is horror in the end. But still, it is a horror film and it does deal with a lot of elements that are traditionally horror elements and is what we do in the shadows.
All
Because
right.
there's legitimately some creepy, unnerving moments in that movie, especially when they have the humans over for dinner
Mm.
and like the spaghetti turning into worms and stuff like that, and then the two cops chasing the are getting chased around the house. There's some legitimately like creepy moments, and that's the thing. It knows how to work its horror elements in a fun
Mm.
way. Like the oh my god, when the werewolves show up at the end
Mm.
of it, that's legitimately scary. And when you actually see them in like their glory, I'm just like, oh man.
I remember the vampire hunting episode is also being kind of creepy because they're like sneaking around that house, and again it has that like
Well,
footage thing going on, and
yeah,
that's
because the original
spooky.
film, I love it so much. And then, not gonna lie, with the show being on for how many seasons have been on now, I think I might love that more than the movie.
I'm a
And
big fan of the show as well. It's just
oh,
funny.
I love Taika Waititi and Jermaine Clement as Viago and of course
Yeah,
Vlad the Impaler.
the spare characters throughout that show are really good.
And then Johnny Brog, who plays Deacon, like the main
Mm,
crew of the actual vampires in the original film are a lot of fun, but they're not Nandor, they're not Nadja, they're not Colin Robinson, and they
Colin
sure as
Robinson's my man.
and
I love him. He's so freaking funny. I quote him all the time.
they sure as hell out Laszlo.
Yes.
Matt Berry is a whole other level. You are the most devious bastard in New York City. Just like you sound like weird and foreign. It's like, oh, that's how we all speak in Arizona.
One human alcohol beer.
I was drinking out of that cup today, Haley. So there you go. I
Love
had
that.
that. I had that during my movie night last night. But I just love the film so much. And one of my favorite things to quote when people are cursing too much is like, "What are we? We're werewolves, not swearwolves." And because Reese Darby is an absolute gem, and he's the leader of the werewolves in that. Oh my god! And the creepy music and everything every time they're talked about the beast, and they're like
Mm.
whoa, and like these deep Gregorian chants, and then have Peter, who's the Nosferatu looking guy who
Yeah.
lives in the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
basement. Oh my god. It's so funny, but it's creepy and it
Mm.
works in both those ways. And there's not many better ways to spend an hour and 25 minutes than watching What We Do in the Shadows.
There you
So that
go.
is why it's my number three. And there's a lot of great horror comedies between like the Evil Dead movies and
Mm.
Tucker and Dale versus Evil and Cabin in the Woods, but What We Do in the Shadows definitely is mine. So there you go.
I would agree. I like that. I think that's it's a good palate cleanser to start things off here, you know?
Absolutely. Before I feel like mine progressively get more unnerving. So there we go. But Haley, what's your number two?
So my number two is the one we were referencing. I think we're on the same page about this,
Uh
but I will preface it by saying that my hot take is that I feel like horror movies are like spicy food.
mhm.
And everyone has their tolerance, everyone has like what they're looking for. I love spicy food, and I think you kind of have to work your way up toward certain things over time, but then like you start to crave it, like even though
Uh
it hurts, like you crave it. That's how I am with both horror and spice. But so like I knew that when I was making my list, I needed to basically put the spiciest one on my list, like the movie that has like affected me the most, and that is Hereditary.
yep.
It
That's exactly
is,
what I was
it
referencing.
might always be, I don't know, man, because I've also seen Midsummer, and that didn't, to me, hold a candle to Hereditary. Shane was there when I saw it.
Uh
That movie messed me up.
I remember recommending Hereditary to Haley and sitting her down and actually showing it to her. And you know, I'll let you talk about it, but two-thirds of the way into the movie, when you're just emotionally devastated from the human drama and you don't think it could get any worse, and then Ari Aster just whispers in your ears, like, "Are you ready now?" And you're just like, "No!"
Like, I wasn't
That's
ready for it to actually get scary. Like, it doesn't really get scary until virtually the end, and by that
yep,
point, you're just so emotionally exhausted.
yep.
You're like, I can't can't handle this now. Like if it had
No.
just been that, it would have been one thing, but it's the road that you had to travel to get there. And like I'm an emotional person, so maybe I think people who are really affected by gore, I feel like Midsummer is like that's gonna freak you out. But for me, like gore doesn't really do it. Um, I do think Ari Aster's use of practical effects in both movies is extremely effective, and
Mhm.
that's what makes it so freaking creepy, like just both movies, but the acting, just the acting, especially of the mother. Like, I mean,
Toni Collette.
that woman is insane.
Why did Toni Collette not get an Oscar? Oh yeah, because the Academy hates horror movies.
That to me is like, it, show me another person like who could do that. Like I don't know, I couldn't do that.
Dinner
Um,
scene.
yeah, right,
That's like, oh
right.
my god.
And even like I don't want to like do a lot of spoilers, but like when you react to something so incredibly horrible unfolding in front of you, like there are probably a million ways to act that out, but her way just was that was the right way. Like she did it. It was so believable and you were so horrified with her. And yeah, then it gets scary.
Yeah.
And in this really like not typical way, like
No.
none of it is standard, none of it follows the general rules of horror. It was just something completely different than I have ever experienced before. And like a really spicy hot sauce, it lingered with me and wouldn't leave me alone for days.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Because this film will emotionally devastate you with just a camera on a young man laying in bed, listening to the reaction to something bad that happened. Because that's the
Yeah.
thing, Ari Aster doesn't need to put it all right in front of your face. There's parts in this movie that just are so effective. And then one shot of a bedroom, and it all goes downhill from there.
Oh God, that scene is one of the scariest. Like for me, just it's one of the
As,
scariest things I've ever
as
seen.
somebody who is a great appreciator of cinematography, sitting in that theater being like, I feel like something's in the corner there. And then the next shot you get, and you're just like, oh.
Well, Shane, wasn't I just like, no, no, no,
Yeah.
no?
And then what happens with the mother is effed up, and then you're just sitting there with the credits being like, Hail Pineman! And then it's just like, well, there we go.
Yeah, I
That
feel
was the
like
journey.
there's like this music at the end that's like weirdly like a Wes Anderson-esque, like creepy,
Oh,
cutesy
oh
thing, and
my
I'm just like,
god.
don't do that to
You know
me.
what's hilarious, Haley? Because what popped in my head was the music from the montage in Moonrise Kingdom, where you have the two
Right.
kids, and it sounds just like that.
Yeah, it's that like sweet, like cute woodsy fairy tale thing, and it's freaky.
Well, this it like the symmetry and just how everything's framed in this movie feels like this is demented Wes Anderson at
Right, it
times.
really is. It has that like and again, I'm like I have so much respect for it. Like I respect the heck out of this movie,
Yeah,
but there are plenty of scary movies where I'm like, okay, I saw that, bye, like done.
this doesn't let you go by.
No, it doesn't.
And even with Midsummer, I feel like it's even more that feeling of just like this looks like demented Wes Anderson because even that
Yeah,
with the colors and stuff like that.
yeah.
And Disappointment Boulevard is Ari Aster's next film, starring
Oh.
Joaquin Phoenix, a
Oh.
decade spanning portrait of one of the most successful entrepreneurs of all time, It's a comedy horror drama. I don't know if I want to know what Ari Aster's sense of humor is.
That's it. I was just about to say the same thing. I'm actually really scared already.
And looking at the cast, Amy Ryan from like The Office is in it, Parker Posey, Nathan Lane, Patty LuPone, Michael Gandolfini. But yeah, just the fact that like Joaquin Phoenix is the lead in this and the kind of work that he's been doing. Oh man.
If he's just if he puts out half the performance he did in The Joker, I'm already disturbed.
Yep. So now my number two is something very different. And I don't know if this is gonna emotionally devastate you, but it will make you paranoid.
Mm.
Because this movie runs on paranoia, and that is The Thing.
Ah,
Because I'm a huge fan of
a
John Carpenter.
classic.
Yes, huge fan of John Carpenter. Could have easily picked Halloween.
Mm,
But I think legitimately The Thing is his best film. Like if you're strictly thinking about like best made, most effective film, because here's the thing. Things like Escape from New York, They Live, Big Trouble in Little China have some of their quirks about them that they're just like you could tell this is way too low of a budget for this whole movie to work out supposed to.
mm.
But The Thing works perfectly and has some of the most amazing special effects that I have
For the
ever seen.
time, I think they were probably absolutely blowing people's minds.
Blows my mind now. Like, how did they make that work? Because,
Mm,
on some level, using like those practical effects, and like you can tell they're not real,
hmm
but they're real in my nightmares. So,
hmm
like, just the spider head
Yeah, right.
that
That's all I think of when I think of The Thing, is just that.
you have chest bursters and aliens an alien, and here you have a literal chest bursting open and biting
Mm,
somebody's hands off,
yeah.
and like stuff like that. And I love the cast because this is such a great cast of character actors. And then you got Kurt Russell right in the center
Mm.
of it as McCready. Keith David's amazing. Wilford Brimley, the diabetes man from all those ads when we were growing up, which like
How far he's come.
to most people our age, we just know Wilford Brimley from being like, I'm Wilford Brimley and I have diabetes. And like on all those commercials, but like I've seen him in things and like he is an intimidating person. And when Blair, like you start questioning if he's turned or not, because that's the whole
Right.
thing. Who's an alien? Who
Hmm
is like I literally just finished watching Invasion of the Body Snatchers for my movie club that we're going to be talking about next week, and like the whole paranoia about like being replaced,
hmm
and like this film, that's what this is. And then when you find out who isn't human, and like the one outside that just turns to them and it's just like
Yeah.
and just like makes the most unnerving sound imaginable. And I will put the blood test up against any scene in horror for being able
Mm,
to really get you. And
yeah.
what's crazy is, so quick fun story. So Ennio Morricone composed this film, which is odd because John Carpenter usually composes his own films. And not gonna lie, the score for this movie is like doom 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 doom, and it's simple like a John Carpenter score, but it's Ennio Morricone, and he had this big elaborate piece called Bestiality for that scene, and it's like zoom doom do 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 doom doom do do do
Mm,
do, and it's just like these strings that keep going like faster and more intense, and they cut it
just
because
like,
they thought the
oh,
scene was so much more effective just being in complete silence. And McCready at one point puts it in, and the bug goes like, "Wah!" And then the one guy's like, and like he starts like growing, and you're like,
yeah.
and like freaking out in that moment. And fun fact, Ennio Morricone recycled bestiality in The Hateful Eight.
Oh, really?
The
Interesting.
coffee scene. That song
Oh,
was originally supposed to be
yeah.
in The Thing.
Wow, that is so interesting. But I feel like with both of our number twos, there's something to be said for like, you know, nowadays we have so much that can be done with like CGI, but
Uh,
the effective horror, the what the people want is good, compelling acting and good practical effects if you can manage it. And like creativity in how it's brought about, because I feel like both The Thing and Hereditary are shot creatively. There's just a lot of like interesting decisions that they didn't have to make, but they really, you can tell they sat down and they thought about it.
yes, we want the most interesting looking human beings out there dressed up in makeup. We don't need CGI things. The Nun, that's just a woman who looks that way and then put on a bunch of makeup. The Crooked Man from Conjuring
Conjuring?
2, 100% thought that was CGI. No, that's a dude.
No way. Really? That scene is not CGI. The
There's
Jack
some in there.
Skellington looking thing.
But that guy is like this really long guy who could do all kinds of weird things with his joints and just like, no, no, thank you, goodbye. But my last thing I want to say about the thing is also one of my favorite lines in the history of movies when McCready comes face to face with the giant blob monster that's like Blair and the dogs and everything, and he's
Mm.
like, "Well, f you too," and just chucks the explosives at it. I'm just like, yes,
That's some just good old fashioned like
Kurt
blow it
Russell.
up.
Yep, Kurt Russell right there. And just I love the ending with him and Keith David, and you're just like, are they human?
Hmm.
I don't know. I'm 100% convinced McCready is human, not convinced that Keith David's character is human or not.
But
Child.
it's fun that you don't know.
Yes, and there's hints, and I know people have said certain things about certain things, and like, is Child's actually human or not? Where'd he go in the climax of the film? All that stuff, but it's a lot to think about.
It's a good sign that there is so much to think about and talk about,
Yes.
because that's another thing where you can enjoy a movie and say, yeah, that scared me, but is there anything to think about, or is it just like an open closed book situation?
Is it still with you all this time later? That's a real good sign. Now,
Yeah.
Haley, what's number one?
So, number one for me is another, movie that I saw on Netflix kind of at random. I saw it, I decided to click it. And the reason why this one, I would say, like surpasses Hereditary in my mind is purely like personal. Like, I think
Mm.
Hereditary is scarier than this movie. But my number one is Our House.
Oh.
And I actually work in immigration law, and this movie, I think, is not only a great horror movie, but it's just an important story. It's a good, I mean, if you have not seen it, like, skip my talking and go watch it, like, in experience it. Don't let me spoil anything. But it's the type of movie that I think you know what it's going to be about.
Mhm.
And you are so wrong. You are
Yep.
so incredibly wrong. And when you realize what it's really about, it slaps you in the face. And I love a good twist.
Hmm.
I think humanizing, this population that honestly they're either scapegoated or they're just viewed as these like pity objects, like refugees resettled in another country. You just think that's all they are. No, they're people. They have demons that probably more so than the average person. And this movie is about them in a very real way reckoning with their demons, and they are not perfect people. They have made horrible mistakes because they were just trying to survive.
Yeah.
And like it's so powerful, you know? I'm just like even thinking of it, it just blows me away every time I even talk about it. I just think it's so great.
Sitting here trying to find it on IMDb so I could share some of the details. I'm like, for some reason, it's not popping up.
No
But
one talks about this movie. It's so good. And it's scary. It's freaking creepy. It's
oh
got the
yeah,
whole like
it
you're in the dark house and like the
his house.
flashlight thing. Ooh. Oh, it's his house?
That's why I could. So his house, and yes, this is about a refugee couple who find themselves. And you saying that this might not be as scary as Hereditary might be overstretched because
It's
my
scary
God, there's moments in this movie, a rope out of a wall. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. There's moments where like I was watching this in like broad daylight,
though.
and
Yeah.
I'm just like, yes. I do not like this. I don't like this at all. And the two actors in this, because like Wunmi Musaku was also in Lovecraft Country.
Oh yeah, I saw a couple episodes of that.
And oh yes, the Sope Derisu is from he's Mr. Malcolm from Mr. Malcolm's List. I watched that over the summer. It's a British like rom com,
Mm,
period rom com. But like the
wow.
two actors in
What
this are
range?
amazing. Yeah, and then Matt Smith pops up.
Hmm.
Pretty sure only like briefly though. Like he's in it, but
Yeah.
generally like this is. And you're right. What this turns out to be actually about, it just hits on a whole other level. It's it's like the opposite of Hereditary, where it's just like it keeps hitting you with all this horror stuff, and then like the third act of the movie, when you realize what it's really about, you're just like,
Then it breaks
oh,
your heart,
oh, then the real horror is humans and what we do to each other,
right?
and you're just like, oh man, that hit
Yeah,
me hard. That
it really
that hit
does.
me. So yeah, so his house I would 100% recommend as well because and hey, you're finding some good Netflix original horror films to recommend to people because there's a
Well,
ton of
Shane, I've
crap.
watched a lot of stinkers, I'll tell you that much.
Haley's done the work to sift through endless trash and to find these
Sift through.
yeah, to find these gems for you and try to even just think about on Netflix like Hush. I remember that being something that I saw on Netflix that turned out to be great and because I'm pretty sure that's Mike Flanagan.
Oh, is it? Because I was gonna say, and we'll get to our
It
honorable
is.
mentions, but there's a reason why I wouldn't include any shows on my top three because come on, what are you
Well,
supposed to do?
that's the thing because like Mike Flanagan did Hush, and I know that because Kate Siegel is in it, and that's his wife
Yeah,
who pops up in all of his stuff. But yeah, if we included TV shows, our whole entire list literally could just be
just be Mike Flanagan.
uh Haunting a Hill House, Haunting a Blind Manor, Midnight Mass, and now there's a new one.
I'm watching it
Oh,
currently.
are you?
So have you watched it
I
yet?
haven't started watching it yet, but I did hear
We'll
there's like
talk.
21 scares in the first episode.
It I think we'll talk about it when you've seen it, but it's it's I think they may be poking a little bit of fun at the genre. That's at least how
Okay.
I took it.
I could see that too because like it's about a bunch of teenagers, right? So
Yes.
I think Mike Flanagan's having some fun because what else is there for him to do but dominate this genre? Because basically,
Seriously.
I
Yeah.
would say Mike Flanagan is the best horror director working today. And like I just finished reading Doctor Sleep.
Mm,
Oh, I love the book and I love that film, and he did an amazing job with it.
he did it. I haven't read it yet, and I will not watch it until I read it. So
Yeah.
that is
Well,
very good to know. That inspires me to read it sooner because if he did that movie, I need to see it.
well, if you don't wind up getting it before March, I know what to get you for your birthday. I or no, Christmas. Christmas coming up. I know what to get you for Christmas.
Perfect. I'm
Surprise,
expecting it
I'm
now.
buying you Dr. Sleep now. So
Good,
you
I
can
want
do
it.
it. So that actually is a wonderful segue into my number one, which is Stanley Kubrick's The Shining.
I was if I had to put money on one, I was gonna say it was gonna be The Shining.
Oh my God. So there's plenty to be said about because like I've read The Shining. I've read so much Stephen King in the past couple of years. Um and The Shining book is quite an experience in itself.
I just bought it recently because I was also like, I can't read Doctor Sleep until I read The Shining.
Yeah.
I've seen The Shining, but that's kind of it's one of the only Stephen King adaptations that's good. So,
Well, and the thing is, it's not a good adaptation of what the spirit of Stephen King's book is, because here's the thing. Kubrick was a legendary filmmaker who took pieces of work and did whatever the hell he wanted with them.
I respect that though. I kind of
Yeah.
wish other people would do that with King's work. If you're gonna do like make it good however you can.
Yeah. Which the thing is, it's like, I just read all the Dark Tower books, and I'm like,
Mm.
realizing now that the movie was a sequel to the books
Oh,
makes a lot more sense now. But
I
like,
haven't seen the movie.
I need to rewatch the movie now because I'm just like, crap. Now that I actually read these books, but because A Clockwork Orange is an adaptation, Lolita is an adaptation. I hate Lolita, but that's another story.
Yeah.
Barry Lyndon is an adaptation, but The Shining, there's so much soul in Stephen King's writing. There's no
Absolutely.
soul in Kubrick's filmmaking. And that's probably people's biggest criticism is the coldness and the
Mm,
distance in his works. But the thing is, that's what works about them. And the Shining film is not about, supposed to be about this man and his descent into being um perversed by evil spirits and his alcoholism. This is about the most unnerving experience you could possibly have.
yeah.
And from the start, you question Jack Torrance's sanity because Jack Nicholson, in even the first scene, is just sitting there like,
Yeah.
and Stephen King notoriously hates the adaptation, hates Jack Nicholson's casting because you expect him to go crazy. And
Yeah.
like I think he wanted John Voight, which like at that point in time, I think that would have worked for what like his book version of
Hmm.
it.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
Jack Nicholson is one of the most gives one of the most unnerving performances I've ever seen in a movie. In
Mm.
this, with just like, honey, you didn't let me finish. I don't want to hurt you. I just want to bash your brains in. And like the fact that Kubrick made Shelley Duvall do that scene 160 times is effed up.
Yeah, talk about
Abusive? Yeah.
right.
That's the thing. Kubrick was a very abusive filmmaker. And Kubrick notoriously beat his actors down until he got what he wanted out of them.
Hmm.
Like apparently even Jack Nicholson was frustrated at times because he's like, "What do you want from me?" Just like,
Yeah.
and it's so funny. There's a video of him preparing for the whole axe scene. Here's Johnny, with the he's like axe murdering, and I'm just like, this is hilarious.
Yeah, that is actually really funny.
Jack Nicholson hyping himself up to do the scene, but Shelley Duvall, which is crazy. This movie won the Razzie. Kubrick won Worst Director. Shelley Duvall won Worst Actress. Like there was a backlash to this movie when it came out, which is so weird to think about now because this is one of the considered the greatest horror movies of all time. Because
Definitely.
the Overlook it's its own character. The actual hotel in the film doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Like Kubrick literally does not have a consistent floor plan, and it's supposed to be that way so you're unnerved, not
Mm-hmm.
understanding how it works. And the moments, like the perfect symmetry, I I quote The Shining on a regular basis, which is really messed up. But it's because I remember I was walking across the front of our suite, and one of our admins is talking to one of our new student workers, like, Shane, how long have you been here? And I'm like, I've always been here. And that's how I tell people how long I've been at Ryder.
Yeah,
I've always been here.
it's
And when
kind
Miss,
of true.
well,
You've
yeah,
always been there since you've been there.
yeah, well, when that whole scene in the bathroom with Grady and Jack is just, oh my God. And he's like, and you have to teach your family a lesson. And you're just like, and Jack Nicholson's just like,
Yeah, yeah.
and you're just like, bad, bad things happening. And it's just the music too. The
Yeah,
music in that movie
that's
is
the big one.
so creepy, but it's just that movie sits with me at all times. The elevator of blood, the furry in the
Mm-hmm.
bedroom. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, nice party. And the guy's blood falling down his face. And probably the most creepy character in the whole entire thing is the damn bartender, who's just like, your money's not good here. Well, thank you. You're just like drinking and just like, oh my God, Jack Nicholson had the most fun probably in his whole entire life, The Shining, and nobody else did.
Yeah, so it would seem.
But that's why it's my number one. Oh my God, it is one of the most um, unbelievable experiences you could have watching a movie. I would love to see that in the theater someday.
Yeah, that's so true. I also, I it's interesting to hear that Stephen King is like so opposed to the adaptation because on the one hand, I imagine like, if you've read Stephen King books, it's it's a journey you go on.
Yeah.
Like the
Oh,
books are
it's a dream.
long, you're in it for the long run. But that's why so many movies fail because you cannot jam the amount of like stuff. And I think like the perfect like if The Shining is on this side of the spectrum, friggin' Pet Cemetery is on the other because Pet Cemetery as a movie always fails because you cannot start with the perfectly like rational dude who's like completely like has all his faculties and end where Pet Cemetery ends and have it be believable. It's rushed and it's like you just are like, what the heck? Whereas when you read the book, it's like hours and hours and hours of you experiencing this man going crazy and you completely are with him by the end. Like you get it and you're there. With Jack Nicholson like starting off as crazy, maybe that's a shortcut, but it's extremely effective. Like just drop
Mm.
him right in, drop us all right in there.
Well, and the fact that Kubrick already made the decision to not give us answers, because the thing is, you get answers in the book.
Yeah.
You know by the end exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
In the film, I feel like you do, but you don't.
I
There's
think
things
like
that
yeah.
there's things that make sense and there's things that don't make sense. Like the whole entire last shot of him being like in that picture doesn't make sense. It's not supposed to. And Kubrick didn't
Yeah,
want it
yeah.
to.
Right.
It's there to make you think.
And by the time I saw it, it had been out so long and there were already so many opinions about it that I feel like I already like was fed
Yeah.
like ideas about it. I'm sure watching it for the first time in the theater would have been a very interesting experience.
And I'm sure a lot of people hated it upon first viewing. But to throw out some honorable mentions, some of the things, so like the Babadook came very
Mm.
close to being in my top three. Oh my God, speaking about watching a movie in broad daylight and being curled up in the fetal position on the couch. Oh man, that's probably one of the scariest things that I've ever watched. Hereditary is definitely up there. Gotta represent my buddy, Robert Eggers with The Witch and The
Mm,
Lighthouse. Love them both. The Northman's not quite a horror movie, so I'm not going to include that, even though I love all three of his films. Um, The Conjuring 2 is legitimately one of my favorite horror films of all time. And I love the Warrens. Like
yeah.
Elaine and Ed, I love them both. And Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson, I would do anything for them. In
They
that,
are
and
so
like,
sweet.
I love them together. And God, Valak, that damn scene with the nun shadow walking across the wall towards the painting, and you just know what's gonna happen, but I'm just sitting there like I'm terrified and I don't want to watch this.
I know. The Conjuring
And
universe is kind of played out, but like I agree with you. I think like the core Conjuring movies, especially the first two,
mhm,
like those were good movies. And I saw like upon seeing them for the first time, both of them I thought were just really well made, well acted. Yeah, they have a huge budget, but like they're just good movies.
yeah,
I'm not hating on them.
and like anything Mike Flanagan, I think we were kind of talked about that. One other one I want to throw out there is The Invisible Man, which I saw
Mm.
with Haley in the
Oh
theater.
yeah, I forgot about that movie. That was yeah, that was very weird. I
There's
loved it.
one scene in a restaurant that is one of the most shocking things I've ever seen in a movie. And I remember sitting in that theater with you just being like, what?
Yes. You
They,
know what other horror movie we saw together was Chucky Child's Play.
yes, the new Child's Play with Mark Hamill and drones and shit. They have a new show, Chucky.
I feel like Chucky is more effective than Annabelle, in my opinion, because of just
100%.
how like unhinged he is.
So there's a Double Toasted. Like I found them on TikTok. I'm pretty sure
Mm.
they're like an actual podcast. And they're like, look at Annabelle. She doesn't do shit. She just sits there, makes people do bad things, and doesn't even move or anything like that.
Yeah, the Annabelle movies, that's why when I said Conjuring universe, I meant like the proper Conjuring
Yeah.
movies because I don't know what it is, but Annabelle, those movies don't scare me.
The
I don't
first
think
one
they're
was
scary.
bad. It was just a bad movie. Annabelle Creation had a lot of things going for it for most of it for me. And then it had that stupid cheesy like, oh, I'm a prequel ending. Um which I want to double check because uh Annabelle.
Was that the one at the with the little girls in the like farmhouse? Yeah, that one was
Yeah,
kind of creepy.
David S.
That
F.
was okay.
Sandberg, who did Lights Out, did that one.
Mm.
Which that's why I think, and like It Follows is another one that's a really impressive horror film.
That's on my list. I know that that's kind of, isn't that sort of like a slow burn type situation?
It's literally death
Yeah.
chasing, like slowly walking after you.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and then like Annabelle Comes Home, I thought was a solid, like haunted. Like, here's the thing. Annabelle Comes Home felt like a trailer for the future of the Conjuring universe. It started feeling like, okay, we're gonna have a haunted house movie with like 15 different things that we can make spin-off movies of every single one of them. And that's what it kind of felt like on some
Yeah, they're
level.
just none of them are as good as the actual Conjuring movies, and it's just like disappointing
The Nun
then.
2 is in production. And I'm like, please don't. Like the Nun was turned out to be such an unfortunate misfire because Valak was terrifying in The Conjuring 2, and then they try to give it Valak its own film, and it just didn't work.
I will say one thing though about The Nun, and this is just a general pro tip in case people don't know this already. I didn't realize it, but until this moment, like the moment when so I wanted to see back when I had my AMC membership and I would just go to the movies
Yeah,
randomly. Shane, you can relate. But I would just go to see like whatever. And I went to see The Nun in theaters, which obviously horror movies in theaters are always better. But I just so happened to see it in Dolby. like the one with like just the very
The
enhanced sound.
surround. Yeah.
Louder is scarier. That's all I'm gonna say. If it's loud, it will scare you more. Like the Nun as a movie wasn't really like that scary, but that was like for me an experience where it was way scarier than it had a right to be just because of
Yeah.
how loud it was. It's just blaring at me and I'm like, oh. Also, that one scene where it's deathly quiet and then things start cracking, being in the theater, that was pretty freaky.
Well, I think sound design could go a long way in terms of building up tension. And like there's some great films that are able to do that, but obviously I just spewed out a whole bunch of honorable mentions for me. Uh Exorcist, talking about some like classic ones.
Yeah.
Exorcist always oh my god. That's a whole other, and that is a deeply effective faith-based film too, on top of it, which there you go. But Haley, what are some of your honorable mentions?
Well, I raise you The Exorcism of Emily Rose, which to me is The Exorcist, but a little newer and a little
Mm.
scarier, in my opinion. Again, saw it when I like around when it came out. I was like a middle school aged girl,
Mm.
watch it with my little friend during sleepover. We stayed up until 3:01 because we were so scared of waking up at 3 o'clock.
Well, you know what's fun is I'm not going to sleep very well tonight after talking about all these because now this is all just bringing these back, and
So
now I'm just going to be like,
dredging it all up. Yeah, there's some like so for people who like demon stuff or
mm,
who find that scary, I should say, because I do find that stuff scary and I go for that sort of thing because I think it's scarier than like slashers. Like you won't hear me talk about many like purely gory movies because I just don't like it's corny to me. It even when it's really realistic, like I think Hellraiser, which I just saw, was that new rendition. It was cool. Like the effects were cool. It's just not scary to me because it's all like gory, like whatever. And I'm just
and I
like,
didn't
okay,
give a
like
crap about
visually it's
any of the
cool.
characters. I also couldn't see shit the whole second half of the movie.
Yeah, so but anyway, like I would say movies that go for more of like the creepy like ghosty stuff I
Mm.
prefer. So I can't remember the name of it, but there was one about so essentially this guy is in the his house is on top of a morgue because like it's one of these like funeral home house combos and his dad is like the funeral director person or whatever.
The Autopsy of Jane Doe.
Yes! That one's freaky. I really like that
Oh my
one.
god,
That one's really good.
I own that because that is amazing
It's a good
with
movie. Like,
Emil Hirsch and Brian Cox. Oh
yeah,
my
and
god.
like it's definitely like you kind of like it the movie starts and then it's just a sprint to the end where like the whole time you're like "Ah, ah, ah."
Speaking of how Annabelle just sits there and doesn't do anything specifically, that corpse, you just keep expecting it to do something, and then it just your skin crawls the whole entire movie. Every time they take a shot looking right at the corpse, and you're just like,
Yes.
don't know. And that's a great one. That's definitely worth checking out if you haven't seen that.
So
Oh
that one I really like. I'm also a big fan of Sinister. So
yes,
same guy or well no that's Ethan Hawke. At
yeah,
least the
Ethan
first one.
Hawke and Scott Derrickson,
Mm-hmm.
who did like Doctor Strange and the Black Phone, and that creeped me the hell out.
That one's a free like I would have said that was like close on my number three list because it's again just like a really solid one. And in my opinion, because of how dark the content is,
Mhm.
might even edge out Conjuring a little bit as being like scarier because it's really messed up.
Yeah,
And I don't like glorify those things like but you can't deny like it's pretty freaky. And it's well executed,
yeah.
which again, they've got the budget. to like pull it off. And the second one wasn't very good, but the first one's really good.
I haven't seen the second Sinister film, but like that, like Sinister, Insidious, and The Conjuring all came out and like that came
Hmm.
same kind of like swoop, and like most of them are James Wan. James Wan
Yes, James
just like
Wan.
grabbed a hold of horror movies and was just like, I'm gonna do this.
The
And
man knows what he's doing.
even with like Malignant that came out recently, in which that movie was weird
Yeah.
and crazy. Oh my god, he and that's the thing. You can watch a James Wan film and know 100% it's a James Wan film.
Yes.
Like even watching like Aquaman, I'm like, this is a James Wan film. Like there's whole action sequences with like the camera crawling across the ceiling of a house, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
just like, yup, saw that in The
He really,
Conjuring.
like, for our generation, I feel like he had kind of a monopoly for a while there, and he really defined, like, what horror was for a little
Yeah,
while there. Like, a lot of the big budget ones, they were by him, or like he had his hands in it somehow, and
because I
that's
feel
really,
like
yeah.
horror for the most part for a while was mainly three places. It was James Wan and Warner Brothers,
Mm.
Blumhouse, which has gone completely off the rails. Like I can't even remember the last thing that I liked from Blumhouse,
Yeah, I
and
was
it's really
thinking about that.
sad.
That used to mean when I saw that at the beginning, I used to think this is going to be a good one, but not so much anymore.
No,
Now
like
it's A24.
well, and that was the third one. A24 is just, and they're a whole other animal. Like
Right.
what they're doing with stuff is they let the most twisted filmmakers they imaginable just do the most twisted movies that you can think of. And like A24 horror movies are a whole other thing.
I think they're super disruptive. Like because we have gotten very comfortable with what we expect. Like some of the more recent Conjuring movies, like The Nun or like La Llorona, like those movies, I mean, it's too safe. You already know. Probably that's why I find Annabelle boring, to be honest, is because I'm
Yeah,
like, I already get it. Like I already know. And then you watch Hereditary and you're like, I just got like I'm just shook because this was
even
completely
devastation.
unlike anything. And so many A24 movies, even if they're not like as scary, yeah, they're fresh, they're different, they're doing something else,
Yeah, exactly.
and I respect that.
But we talked about a lot of horror movies. Hopefully, you out there watching this have plenty of things to add to your watch list. I know Haley had some great Netflix gems. Mine were definitely more like classic, like 80s, early,
Like if you've
both,
missed them, go back and
yeah.
watch it.
And What We Do in the Shadows if you need a nice, good laugh, palate cleansing after all this.
Can I add
Um,
one more Netflix gem, actually,
okay.
now I think about it? So for a little while, I was gonna have my number three be Creep, which is also on Netflix.
Ah,
This is not like any of the other things that we've talked about. This movie is completely different. But the reason why I want to put it out there is because if you have not seen it, I mean, I don't like recommending this movie to people, first of all, because I don't like to associate myself with this movie. But if you haven't seen it and you are like ready to just go through something, like if you would just want to have anxiety basically for like an hour and a half, this movie will definitely make you feel more uncomfortable maybe than anything I've ever seen. Like it's it's so effective, and the thing I love about it is that I always joke with people like it must have cost like a
no.
thousand dollars
Yeah.
max. Like I could have made this movie. It's just there's really only like one actor, and this man is inspired. Like
Mark Duplass
that guy.
Mark Duplass is a great filmmaker. He's a great actor. He has a great career for himself. And between Creep and Creep 2,
I have not
uh,
seen Creep 2 because I won't. I'm good.
Creep 2 takes you in a whole entire other direction. It is
Really.
crazy.
Is it worth watching?
Yes, 100%.
I'm surprised. I was kind of like I felt like the whole thing about Creep was that you watched the first one and I didn't think it could possibly still be good
It's
like after you see it
it's the
first
kind
one.
of thing that it doesn't try to do the same thing over again,
Okay, good.
and but it's still equally as effective at what it's trying to do.
Well, I apologize to anyone who does end up watching it because I said something and then thinks to themselves, "Oh yeah, I did make you watch it, didn't I?
That's
I'm
how
so
I found out
sorry."
about Creep was from Haley. So, but it was worth it. I own. Do I own it yet?
I mean, it's really effective. Like it takes a lot. Like it does what Blair Witch did not, actually. It made a movie that, like, I'm not gonna say you believe everything you see necessarily, but it's like this person. Oh, there it is. There you go. Look for it.
There you go. Look at that. Look at that face. Look at that Mark Duplass. Just look at him.
So freaking unsettling, man.
Because him and his brother have made some great stuff together. Because like, there's a show on HBO, Room 104, that every episode it takes place in the same motel room. Just a different people renting the motel room, and
Oh,
all kinds of weird stuff happened at motel room. Like I
that's so
think
interesting.
one of the episodes is two people getting together to like eat each other. Yeah.
I mean, motels probably see a lot of weird stuff. So
Yep.
if you're just like focusing in on the highlights, I can
And I
only
mean
imagine.
literally eat each other.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
not like in a sexual way.
Maybe for them it was. Who
I
knows?
think it was, to be honest.
Look, I'm a vegetarian. I won't even eat animals, let alone other people. But
Other people.
ah,
But yeah, creep is a special one to throw out there. But yes, compile your lists now. You have plenty of things to check out, people. Is the season? Go enjoy all of our wonderful choices for horror films. But Haley, thank you as always for coming on.
absolutely. Thank you for letting me talk about scary movies for a couple minutes because I often just give these opinions unsolicited, but you
See,
actually
now
asked.
on the internet.
Yeah,
And Haley will be coming back soon for Welcome to the Wasteland for my Lincoln episode of my Spielberg journey. And on top of that, she will be doing a classic review of Snatch
yes,
sometime in
so
November.
excited for that one.
So Haley will be back soon. But thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.